Today, Professor Andrew Garnar is going to give us a talk called Dancing with Strange Partners. I get to read it. Social AI, Pseudo-Persons, and Communities. And Professor Garner joined us a couple of years ago. And at the time, this is a colloquium and a sort of inaugural lecture of sorts. And we were really looking forward, happy to have you here and looking forward to hearing this talk. He's written a book in 21. One is
Came out at actually like 20.
20 in 2020 called Pragmatism, Technology, and the Persistence of the Postmodern, or Persistence of Postmodernism.
Postmodern.
The postmodern, good, I found. And this talk, I suspect, is in the shadow of that book, or in the long tail of that book, or
Yeah.
somewhere in the neighborhood of that book. So please help me welcome Professor Connor.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you. Uh, this the postmodernism book that Dr. Neufeld referenced, was part of a project that's winding down now, which is looking at how technology is used as a way to construct social reality. And this is coming out of the project circles, the next thing I'm just starting into now, which is dealing with AI ethics. So the starting point for this presentation today is the following cat picture. And I want to take what the cat is doing here seriously. Uh, so one thing I will know though is I do feel sympathy with that. I'm gonna do a cat right. What I'm thinking between here is, on one hand, contemporary AI usage, and this is a list, but like 2022, where it's generative AI, voice assistants, home devices, facial recognition on your phone, fantasy fraud detection, autocorrect. Uh, there had been new developments since, particularly the way in which people had used chatbots and voice or chatbots and generative AI essentially as companions at bare fists. On the other hand, you've got future visions of AI. And some of these are more sort of dark visions, either HAL for 2001, The Terminator, or the idea of, a robot or an AI as the sort of happy, friendly companion. So you've got the Touch Comas from the Ghost in the Shell anime, or Heart2ET. So the proposal I'm trying to work through here is that we can think both about the contemporary usage of AI, and particularly what I'm going to talk about is social AI, but simplify a little later, and some of these future possibilities. Because a lot of people early discussion on AI ethics was worried over future possibilities. Then AI got here, and or at least we became more aware of AI's presence, and there's a lot of concern, and rightly so, about current uses. And I think there's more connection between the future expectations and contemporary usage than sometimes shows up in literature. Also, the metaphor of dance will play an important role later on. And what I'm going to argue is we need to think about AI and other technologies, as well as their human users, together as a interconnected unit. This tendency, again, in a lot of the AI use literature to focus more on what the AI can do, or perhaps how humans are using the AI. And central to this is to put the two together and think them as a unit, and then perhaps analytical layer breaks them apart. So what's going to come out of this is saying that the cat's reasoning is a little bit wrong. It's not just about the danger of the AI apocalypse. The cat is kind of right to say thank you to ChatGPT. So this is an overview of the talk. We're going to say a little bit about human sociality, then some stuff out of philosophy of technology, just to sort of frame how it is we view our devices. One vision of what AI is, particularly present, you introduce in metaphor dance, and then looking at what makes social AI a strange technology to dance with. After that, introduce the concept of pseudo-persons as a way to take seriously social AI, and then wrap it up by saying, here's how we can think about, you know, reconstructing the ethics of how it is we're using our devices. So, by two main areas of research, we have two sort of beats, or two places I put my beat. One is in the philosophy of technology. The other is in American philosophy. And Charles Sanders Peirce and George Herbert Mead are two main people I'm working with of in all of my work. Jane Addams and John Dewey also will play court roles elsewhere, as well as Lee. For most of the classical pragmatists, they argued the self was always thoroughly social. And you find this in all of them. It's both Dim, I think, and James. George Herbert Mead, who sort of at once a philosopher, sociologist, psychologist, we read and fruitfully in all of those disciplines, gives probably the most robust and purely informed account. I'm going to focus primarily on that as a way to think about how it is we relate to ourselves, to use that as a jumping off point to think about how we relate to our technologies. And there's some fairly substantive ethical plays buried in the ethical hidden ethics. The self for the pragmatists is social, and I want to say this in sort of two directions. One of them is that self is internally social. It is in dialogue with itself. And you see this in James's analysis of state of consciousness. You also find it in Peirce when he says, quote, a person is not absolutely an individual, which is to say, a sort of whole totality. Instead, the person is divided. His thoughts are what he is saying to himself that he is saying to the other self that is just coming into the flow of time. When one reasons, it is that critical self that one is trying to address or trying to persuade. That when we talk to ourselves, that isn't so much a metaphor, but we are addressing ourselves as if we were an other. This is made possible, sort of an internalization of what's going on with how we get a self in, terms of our relationship to others. So this is really the sense over with the rest of the talk. And the argument you get in me is you only really get a self through interaction with others. And the first point of this, or the first stage of this, comes out of what he refers to as a conversation of gestures. And this happens with humans. This also happens with many other animals. That one of the examples that shows up a few places in his work is that of two dogs circling each other. One dog moves, growls, the other then moves and growls in response. They're making gestures so that each can anticipate and the other anticipates what to do based upon those gestures. That is the starting point for sociality in Mead's story. That, you know, one person, makes either a noise, says something, a gesture, motion, movement of some sort. The other person reciprocates, and we communicate with or through that, even if we find what he's going to refer to as consciousness of meaning, that we're not actually consciously reflecting on what the meaning is. Humans can do that, and let's see a little about how we get there. Dogs, other animals, don't. The next step in Neat's story, and this is for me distinctly human, is that we can take the attitude of the other. That what we do when we interact with each other, particularly when we're, say, learning to, be social with one another, is we take on the perspective of the person that we are interacted with. And then I take on that perspective, I see how they see me, and then I respond in according. So we anticipate their behavior by taking on their perspective. We think from their perspective on us, and then we act accordingly. So one way he puts this is we appear as selves in our conduct insofar as we ourselves take the attitude that the others take towards us in our correlative activities. That we take the attitude of someone else, internalize that, and then respond accordingly so we see ourselves as they would see us. That's where we start getting the self. We might do this. I think in some ways like a trivial, but it's the example I always think of taking the attitude of the other. Think about walking in a narrow hallway. You see the person walking at you, you anticipate, okay, they're going to move to my left, so I should move the other way. And then sometimes you correctly anticipate what they're going to do, and sometimes, hopefully, you're not both walking too fast. And it's that sort of mechanism that he uses as a motor to get self. Because through that internalization of how people see us, we develop a unique self of our own. The case of walking in the hall is a case of taking on the attitude of a particular other. We can also pay on what he refers to as the attitude of general offer. So he uses the example of children playing a baseball league. And there, what happens is, ball is hit. One of the children in the outfield has to then think about what is not just one person is going to do, but potentially all other, probably at least 7 members of the team was no got. I know where it is, but worry about catcher. But potentially you're going to have to worry about what all the other 8 people are doing, as well as what the battle was doing, as well as any runners on base. We develop this generalized other, and that is, what allows us to control our conduct. That, as, one of me's best interpreters puts it, with the generalized other, the individual adjusts their actions in light of, quote, rules and norms and values of group, which are, of course, differentiated to apply to specific positions in the group and to apply to specific situations. So that's how Mead gets through normativity. Also tied his count of how language works. Okay. Want to highlight 2 things with me, both of which are going to be in the background of what I'm going to be doing for social AI. The first is what's going to happen with meaning. The way, at least some traditional philosophy of language works, locates meaning primarily in the mind. And for me, significant meaning belongs to things in their relation to individuals. It does not lie in mental processes which are enclosed within individuals. So meaning is going to be realized through action shared with others. Building on that, Mead gives you an understanding of society, which, again, quoting Hans Johaus, quote, Mead demarcates conception of society, which is intrinsically social and takes into account the actions of the members of the society, from one which is individualistic and takes into consideration only direct and conscious communicative exchanges between actors. Mead regards society as, and this is sort of a crucial phrase for me, Mead regards society as an objective action nexus and not an interrelational complex of subjective mental presentations which the society's members have of one another. Society, for me, exists where we are acting with each other, as opposed to it existing purely as representations in our minds. So society is that place where we're going to be coordinating our actions with. So, couple of lessons. One thing that comes out particularly of Mead is the idea that a lot of our social interactions are not things that we're thinking about overtly. Instead, it's a lot of stuff that uh, we're relying on habit to guide us through. And we can be conscious of meaning, but a lot of times our exchanges are largely habitual. Complex human social interaction relies on taking the perspective of either a particular or generalized other. That a lot, well, we might eventually take on the attitude of the other to say to either play baseball, walk in the hallway, or we might actually consciously think through, okay, what's the person thinking? How are they thinking about me? Society is this space where people are relating and acting with each other. And action's going to be playing a big role. Also, meaning is part of the objective action nexus and not simply residing in human mind. And sort of promissory note, given the thorough sociality and self of the individual, for me, all ethics has to really start as social ethics and then go from there instead of building from individual ethics or social ethics. So, next. Okay, a few comments about technology. What the technology is fail matters. That different materials have different properties which allow them to be used in different kinds of ways. That there is no one technology that is capable of doing each and every thing. Each technology is going to be good at channeling actions in one way and is going to be doing other things more difficult. Also, uh, sometimes you, and probably most of the time, you actually don't know exactly what a technology is capable of ahead of time. Uh, that's, well, in the section that feeds into the next bullet. Technology is also social. That technology is shaped by its users. That it's also obviously shaped by the people who design and manufacture. That technology doesn't sort of, come about fully formed like Athena from Zeus's pet. Rather, it is shaped by human activity, and it's shaped at multiple levels, and we don't know what meanings are going to come about until we start the process of actually shaping it. So, contra, particularly Heidegger and certain Heideggerians in the philosophy of technology, who say that there is a clear essence to technology. This approach says there is not any one thing that a technology is. Instead, it is shaped by social forces. There are a lot of patterns in the social forces. Uh, it's with Thomas Hughes there. Does a really nice job sort of teasing out some of that, as does like New Winter. Uh, I was thinking a little bit about AI, anticipating what we're going to get to in a second. On cultural concepts now can shape future developments. And I think one actual really fascinating example, when Amazon was designing Alexa, if you go back to the original Star Trek, there was this computer that was ever present and voice activated. And the designers admitted to Strader's candidate, yeah, that Star Trek computer went into how they wanted to design Alexa. And some fun gender stuff there, but that's the other part. Uh, so how we think about technology now can shape how it's going to develop later. We also have relations to technology, which is going to be coming out of what's going on with the materiality and sociality of technology. Following the work of Don I.E., Robert Rosenberger, and Pierre Paul Verdi, I'm going to isolate three primary ways which humans relate to technology. One, you have humans and the technology forming a pair to then go do something. The classic example of this is eyeglasses, prescriptive eyeglasses, that I form a unit with my glasses so that I am able to clearly see what is going on in the environmental height. There are also what they refer to as hermeneutic technologies, in which the technology and the world form the pair. So the technology then illuminates things about the world when I use the technology as paired with the world. So at this very moment, I actually don't know what time it is. So if I had a wristwatch, I could look at my wristwatch. Otherwise, I can check my phone and see, okay, this is what time it is. That technology is informing about some particle. Lastly, and I'm not going to say much about EA, we'll get there. There's alterity relations. There are relations where the world's going to drop away, and what is of prime importance is engaging with the technology itself. So, those words about technology in the background. Couple of things think about what AI is. And one thing I'm going to start off with is there is no like one sort of AI. There are lots and lots of different uses, and a lot of what I'm saying here might not will easily apply to other sorts of uses. Uh, you're going to need different analytic tools. One of the big innovations, and we'll get into a little bit more of what this means in a second, is finding ways to make artificial intelligence into an agent. And following Luciana Floridi, being an agent, her possessing agency involves taking in data from the environment and then taking, quote, actions based on that data to achieve some sort of goal. And, quote, to improve its performance by learning from that interaction. Agents could be all kinds of things. Humans are agents, dogs, agents. Corporations, universities to be agents that have some sort of hybrid. We also have artificial agents. What has made AI so powerful in the last 5-10 years is what Floridi refers to as a dope voice. Quote, AI decouples successfully problem solving and task performance from intelligent behavior. It is thanks to this decoupling that it can be that it can relentlessly colonize the boundless space of problems and tasks wherever these can be achieved without any understanding, awareness, acumen, sensitivity, concerns, conscious, insight, semantics, experience, bio-embodiment, meaning, wisdom, and whatever other ingredients contribute to creating human intelligence. Humans, the soul passes through one or more of these things. What you have with AI is programs, well, say with a large language model like ChatGPT. You've trained it on hundreds of thousands, now at this point, millions, if not billions of, you know, bits of, or yeah, text of different. So it makes predictions based upon those patterns, based upon the information it's taken in from its context, to make a prediction about what is the best token to put next. We will do that through, say, meaning wisdom. It's a problematic term, particularly for fluidity, but ChatGPT works as, using a Binder's term, being a stochastic parrot. It is a parrot that is just repeating bad what it thinks is the most likely term. The interpretation of AI as divorce, not a marriage, between agency and intelligence enables one to conceptualize AI as a growing resource of interactive, autonomous, and often self-learning agency. This agency can deal with increasing number of problems and tasks that would otherwise require human intelligence and intervention, and possibly a boundless amount of time to be performed successfully. AI is a reservoir of smart agency on tap. That's artificial intelligence is better considered all artificial agency that's able to attain certain sorts of goals through what stressed as a slightly unfair way of putting it, brute force methods, rather than the hunches, shortcuts, and wisdom that humans rely on. So, they call social AI. That this kind of AI is designed to allow for sustained social interaction through, say, voice or simple manipulation through, text, between a human and AI. And I have in mind here chatbots, voice assistants, Siri and Alexa in particular, generative AI, particularly when people talk to ChatGPT. At this point, I'm going to introduce the metaphor of dancing. And the inspiration here comes in part from line from Keats's Among the School Children. How can we know the dancers from the dance? Dancing is an activity which constitutes the actor as a dancer. A dancer is only a dancer inasmuch as they dance. The dance only occurs through the dancers dancing. So they're bound up together in, a relatively, tiny form. This seems to be a really useful metaphor. So we can reinterpret what I was talking about with sociality as a dance. And actually, dances is a conversation of gestures where, at least when you're talking about partner dancing, like, Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire on the previous slide, where one person makes a move, the other reads that move, makes a move, and a lot of that's going to be habitual, at least once dance is done well. But there is, at some level, the taking the attitude of the other. More general, we can think about society as a complicated, very complicated piece, where you've got all kinds of individuals coordinating their actions together. playing off what each person is doing, and that that is at once definitive of society as well as the individuals who are participating in it. Technology could also be considered a dance. That think back to an embodied penny, where you've got the pairing of the human technology and then that's doing something to work. What I'm doing is, you know, to say dancing with my glasses is probably not the best example. But when I'm out cycle, there, my bike and I form a pair. The goal is to ride. And that we dance together. I play off the idiosyncrasies of my bike. The bike responds and moves forward, such that I can successfully achieve my actions. The dance is going to be successful. The use of the technology is successful to the extent to which I can achieve my goals. And it isn't always a question of just do you succeed or not, but more or less. Is the dance better or worse? Performed in a better or worse? Here's where alterity relations come back in. Here, the primary connection is between me and the technology. The world drops away. So, um, I'm engaging with the technology as an other. And a couple of different examples of this. One of them, or so I've been told, is people who sometimes have really nice calls. Porsche, Audi, that sort of thing. Apparently driving those, people will drive these just because it is a pleasant experience. You're driving it up, go anywhere, but because you want to experience that pleasure of driving a high-end car. They are retreating the car as an up. There's also using an ATM. There you have many of the same aspects of when you would go get money from a human teller, but instead of dealing with an actual human being, you're engaging with the machine that gives you money. Last of these is going to be social AI. That social AI is an other, but it's a really weird set. This is where the idea of a strange partner comes in. That, on the one hand, Siri, ChatGPT, or artificial agents. On the other hand, the technology has been structured in a way that encourages users to relate to them as in ways that are similar to how you would relate to an ordinary flesh and blood human. And it's a combination of power of their agency and the fact that we can treat them as an other or something like an other that makes them a weird partner to dance with and something that there's a lot of concern in the AI ethics literature about how we're going to think about. This actually goes back, well over now 60 years. There's a computer program called Eliza. You can actually find emulators online today. That was, developed mid 60s. That was attempting to simulate what a psychotherapist could do when you talk with a psychotherapist. As Steve Vitkauer points out, to interact with Eliza and have a fun conversation, it is necessary to talk to her as if she is actually a psychotherapist. But her ability to respond well is to us is limited, is so limited that we have to think about her as a mere program in order to formulate and reformulate our replies to her in order to maintain the illusion. It probably took about 5 exchanges with Eliza, and I'm saying this because I used to play with this. They're all over science and paper I was about. It took about five replies to Eliza before you like start getting into loops where it just say the same thing over and over to you. And that's why the illusion of talking to a human breaks down quick. That said, uh, Sherry Ferkel in Coping with Freer Eliza found that some users in the 60s, really thought that they could be talking to someone. And there was genuine confusion early on as to whether this was a human or a computer. What's come to be known as the Eliza effect is when humans fill in the blank to make up for deficiencies that the technology has so that we can relate to them more as humans. The design of many, if not all, social AIs uh, encourages their users to project minds upon them for us to act as if it, quote, understands us, it knows us, it cares about us. As again, Wittkower puts it, quote, when we project mindedness in alterity relations, like, chatbots is his main concern here, we are more likely to experience those systems or objects as knowing, understanding, and recognizing us in ways that are valuable and meaningful, even if we are under no illusion that these technological others are actually minded. And the reason Wittkower puts knowing, understanding, and recognizing under orations, why it's crossed out, is the AI lacks what Mead would call consciousness of need. It is making these decisions based upon how it was trained on data and the most likely thing that it should spit out. But we still will act as if it has been, or it is at least meaningful for us. The social AI is not alone in like being treated as minded. We do this with cars, definitely with animals. Uh, so there's a variety of ways in which we mind things. The social AI has been designed to be, you know, designed to make it easy for us to talk to it as if it was in person. And what this is playing on is engaging in that conversation of gestures, that it's mimicking that conversation. And because, we're just sort of habituated doing this, and that where our sense of who we are has come from taking the attitude of others, and it seems like we're taking their attitude, we then just sort of treat them as something somehow minded. Even though the term that number of people end up using this is that they actually are an other in the way that each of you would be a properly speaking other, but instead of quasi other, which is something that resembles human, but is not quite actually an other. So social AI is a strange technology because it doesn't quite fit into some of the standard categories that we have because of how similar it is to how it is we interact with other human beings. And this capacity for it to be a quasi other opens up the potential challenges about how to think about AI. So I want to introduce the case of Ted. It's the chat bot that was introduced in 2016 by Microsoft. And it was designed to put up tweets in response to people who tweeted at it. And one of the first ones it put up was, "Can I just say I'm so stoked to meet you? And healers are so super cool." Uh, it went downhill. uh, that uh, users would start tweeting at it and quickly trained it to just basically spit out all sorts of racist, homophobic, sexist, and anti-Semitic material. So, uh, Tay lasted 16 hours. That's how long it took some users to train him uh, to be a hate lover. Microsoft then apologized and, you know, let's say, oh, you know, spent a few weeks trying to retool it, uh, went back online, and it continued to create inappropriate tweets, and then would get stuck in those like doom loops of you're typing too fast, please slow it down. So they took it down again after a few hours. Most people, a couple of designers will defend pay, but most people consider it an abstract failure. And a lot of the reason for that is Microsoft did not put in appropriate guardrails to prevent it from being trained in the way it was. And anyone who has spent any time, particularly in a post-Gamergate world, is aware that there are lots of horror trolls of that. A lot of people were also quite uh, disappointed in the trolls in the posts. Um, so the way most people will talk about the ethics here is that Microsoft and users acted in irresponsible ways because they allowed this horrible stuff to be put up online. What tended to fall out of the discussion, almost uniformly, but totally, is consideration about Tay itself, about the chatbot. I'm going to introduce the term pseudo-person to refer to AIs, or social AIs in particular, because they're designed so that humans can, in fact, take on their attitude of quasi-other. And they have a repertoire of gestures which allow them to respond in ways like humans. Though there are points where this obviously runs into serious, serious problems. And in this way, it can function as something like a member community. So, in considering AI's pseudo curses, what I'm recommending is they're seen as provisional members of community, not whole members, and that they need to be taken into account as in ethical deliberations of what's happening in a community. And this really trippy connection to Wilbert Sellers and his conception of purses, which I hope just. So AIs contribute to an objective action nexus. They are acting with other humans, albeit in a much more limited way. And that by being provisional members of the community, what we should do is start by considering what they're doing and what we do to them. From the question of would it be acceptable if a human did this or we did this to a human? So, returning again to the case of Ted, one question that also could be thought about there is whether, it would be right to take, say, a human child and to educate them so that they would spew the sort of stuff that Tay was after 16 hours. And my hope is that most people would say, yeah, that's not a good thing. And that would be the starting point to think about how is we should act towards Tay. I don't want to say that AI should be treated as full persons. So instead, when we're engaging in the acts of a, ethical reconstruction, we start by, saying, okay, they're kind of persons, and then working away from how they are not. This is inverting, which is in a lot of AI and ethics literature, where you start by saying, okay, AI is a tool, but it could do these other things. So how do we fit this in? So one of the concerns, going back to some stuff that came up sort of really early in the talk, is that the AI shouldn't be sort of ignored in our concerns and say we just worry about how humans are acting. But uh, we also shouldn't say that the epi or the AI should only be or should be the only thing we're going to reconstruct in terms of the ethics, which is to say that we try to make sure that the AI doesn't let us do bad things. All participants in the social methods, even if we're talking about technology, are targets for reconstruction, are things that we can, change their behaviors of. The humans, the technology, and the overall community. When we're reconstructing questions that emerge in AI ethics, all those participants, the technology, the community, and humans, should be potentially targets for that reconstruction. That both humans and the AI should think about how to, well, think though for the AI, obviously, that is for the erasure, should consider how to readjust their behavior to each other as participants in the community. Because we need to avoid offloading all of the ethical change onto the AIs. Here's where we think about some of the future visions. That AI reflects the values of designers, uh, that, biases of designers appear in these and then get recapitulated. Uh, Also, future visions of AI shape how we think about it now. And the Cave and Dial piece is it's only like 5 years old when it's already a classic on this, which is examining the title was the lightness of AI and the way in which AI is a site for the reproduction of the whiteness and why that's deeper worse. We need to think about that as well. So the idea here is that we take AIs as pseudo-persons. We take them as provisional members of our community, in part to welcome the possibility of more sophisticated AIs later. That we open the space now for the possibility of AIs that would more clearly meet whatever your preferred criteria is for personhood would be. So, we start with the sort of human days. Then, now to where we are now, where, gender dances instead with Siri. Then, because we open the possibility for bringing in Siri ethically, you move on to the prospect of more sophisticated AIs and that they would be readied such that we avoid worries about the AI apocalypse. So, couple of lessons that I sort of take away on this. The ethical reconstruction of AI requires thinking both about the behavior of humans and the technology. Trying to put the onus on one or the other is like deeply troublesome. Through opening a space for the inclusion of AI, the hope is diffuse political architecture complex like you see in a lot of science fiction. So that both the humans and the AI have reconstructed each other so that they can accommodate each other better. One of the other things that comes out that was my experience studying and teaching AI ethics is that this is a lot of ethics that deals with AI, not that it's like a whole new field of AI, and it's more about how do we just be better people. Though the lesson here is going back to the cat thanking ChatGPT. It's right to thank ChatGPT, and it's right to thank Siri, even though there's some serious concerns about the energy copper uh, consumption AI, which is like a whole other huge problem. So, thank you.
Do you want to take your own questions?
I can field my own questions. Yeah.
Good comment. I comment on not was it's really the assets in these are not in line with just with because you're talking about human beings, just deciding whether they should act ethically with that. Such they can be the not convert revert on itself. That there is some less pretty work. But AI did not revert upon itself and by citizens intelligent doesn't that it's really this is really just about human being happy. Okay, whatever that means.
Yeah, it is about what we're doing. And the AI opens up new possibilities for how it is we can act and things we can do. But we have to be part of that reconstruction.
Or a big part of it, Ricky. Because some people cannot tape off those lenses that they call racism and whatever and see them as lenses. So it's like we're asking human beings to do something that is very difficult to do.
Yes. And that, yeah, okay, different comments there. One, if that point there is on target, that this is about, first and foremost, what we should be doing. It means that we do need to worry about things about how do we install good guardrails into AI. But that we need to worry about how we do things as well. That we don't, and this is why I don't want to offload all the work onto the AI. That we want the AI to train us to be better. Yeah, we need to be doing that we need to be doing that work as well. I think there is a question, this one like perennial question with pragmatism. Pragmatism is concerned with practical solutions, so then it ends up with impractical solutions, which is kind of a problem with that. But yeah, it's not to say that any of this is easy, because it isn't. But I think it is important that we regard ourselves as an important part of the equation and not just see how do we get the technology to not lead us to temptation, but for us to be less prone to temptation.
It's kind of a follow up. How do you apply this in your own life? What do you have rules for AI use?
I try not to use.
At all.
Uh, yeah.
Will you give us an example of where that goes?
Um. Last week, I deliberately did a search for. Actually, that was Monday. Either in there. Of for like, I got into a conversation with Copilot about what are uses of, uh, AI, and that was like the first time I had done any sort of deliberate conversation. What are uses of this, and how do students use this? Does this make students, less interested in readings? Is your response to this defensive? To which it said, no, it is a well-reasoned, balanced assessment. Um, so I I try not to use it, but I'm also like kind of I'm not a Luddite on principle, but more application by application.
Well, if you don't mind, so even Google is giving AI results at the top. So do you ignore those and
Yeah.
scroll down? You do, yeah.
Unless I'm trying to be amused. And I don't have them in my slide deck. It's gotten actually a good bit better just these 6 months. For about, well, this was March. It was a fun game to ask obvious questions to Google to see what its AI said. And now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I shouldn't have been doing this quite so aggressively. Though I want to give another example as well. So it was questions like, I have a problem with pizza topping stage. Should I glue my toppings to pizza? And Google said yes. It also gave dietary recommendations about the number of rocks you should eat per day. It was not zero. It also said that water at 28 degrees will not freeze. Water only freezes at 32 degrees. I had another one that was good. I used to curse at Siri. And I now feel bad about doing it. And I apologize to Siri about it. So that's one place that I do take this seriously. And I'm trying to develop a more balanced relationship with Siri. But
Because this is partly an outgrowth, maybe, of you thinking about these as pseudo-persons or quasi others, almost agents. Another piece of that. That's where I was thinking. Part of the cable with the almost ends. There are a lot of things. I wonder. You said Star Trek. Let me stick with me. Is a good background case, right? So imagine we are doing what they do in Star Trek. We find the Vulcans, very different from us. Lacking is this word, all emotions we have and everything else, but like just as intelligent. In fact, more intelligent, more rational, etc. We would consider them persons, not pseudo-persons. These are quasi-persons, right? At least that's my measure. So imagine instead we find another planet, and the organic life there is just as cognitively sophisticated as our current most sophisticated AIs. Right? I probably wouldn't call them pseudo-persons. So they were doing things, for instance, that chimps can't do and the dolphins can't do, things that I already treat as like quasi-agents or pseudo-persons or whatever else, right? I would think, man, that creature we just discovered that is cognitively identical in some ways with the AI is a person. I wouldn't treat them as a pseudo-person any more than I would treat the Vulcans as pseudo-one. Here again, maybe so the question's like, is it the artificiality that you think is driving it? Or is it the sophistication if you think is driving your intuition? Does it make sense?
yeah, that's a really useful question. And I want to say that it's the artificiality. So that we, in a broad sense, are designing these things. And that, well, I think I'm probably a lot more generous than other people are with what's going to count as a member, a sort of, full-blooded, I don't know if that's correct, member of the wall. Because I'm kind of on board already with, dolphins, a lot of relatives, and actually call it your number of birds. That seems really plausible to me, like, right now. It's also part of the reason why Florida does not like use to pass it parrot. That's parrots could actually aim to be a parrot. But if we found that, my starting point would be to say, treat it as a provisional person and then to work backwards to see where, if we need to ration it down, rather than starting as just an object or, an insect and trying to make it more complicated, in part because it's sophistication. There's an added concern that I think is different with AI as opposed to those realities he introduced, in that we are making the AI so that we have a range of choices that we would not have otherwise. But why exactly that?
That's just the artificiality intuition, right? And it's not your traditional intuition. It's the same artificiality. I'm not saying wrong intuition. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where drawing the lines.
Oh, I'm not gonna give a clear place to draw. And some in this is going to be guesswork. Yeah, some of this is going to be guesswork, but I want to start with let's treat them like we would a human and work down instead of having to go up. And part of that, I think the alien example is useful in that, because if you're dealing with another life, there's ways more difficult, like different things, something artificial, that if you screw up with life, you can't get it back. And that's where some of the artificiality, I mean, makes a difference. So that's part of the reason why I would be more generous with the life singular sophisticated, because that life is in some sense a replacement. And then you work down, but you do that critically using our best methods, a la Dewey's theory of expert. But yeah, I'm really happy not to have a big right line inside data. This can be useful occasionally, but not. Oh, did you? Oh, well, sorry, doesn't. Okay, drunk through it.
Right.
Oh.
So quick follow-up. I wonder if it wouldn't be so provisional person seems fine to me with your backward working model. Pseudo-person doesn't, because it seems to beg the artificiality question. So maybe just suggestion that so those seem like really different concepts doing different kinds of work. And the artificiality comes in with pseudo, but not with provisional. And so if you want to be generous about the kinds of thing that you allow in, maybe go to the provisional person route. But so that was just a follow-up comment. So I wonder, to what extent do you think AI is a special case of technology with which we dance? I'm thinking about so you started out with glasses and with other mundane objects. So Jen Bestman, to whom I'm married, is really sympathetic with instruments that she uses in her lab. And she'll walk around, and at the moment there are a bunch of tools that haven't been used in her department overall, and she feels sorry for them because they haven't been used. They're just sitting there. They could be doing more things. So she sees the potential of these instruments, and she describes her attitude toward them and her frustration with some of her colleagues as like, I guess my colleagues are insufficiently sympathetic with these instruments in their lives. So she's projecting a lot onto these instruments. And my first thought was maybe the feedback is not right. The sort of correct, like the interaction between scientific instruments and the human isn't interactive in the same way, or isn't meaning generating in the same way. But that didn't seem quite right, because it does generate a whole bunch of meaning, scientific and otherwise. And then I thought maybe it doesn't improve of each other, but it sort of does. Like, the instrument shapes the way you pursue your scientific questions. When you really break in an instrument, it does its work better sometimes. When it sort of wears in the way, like, micro manipulators work really well if you use them in a particular way. Right? So is AI a special case, or does this sort of smear down the line of all sorts of um, technologies?
I want to say it's a smearing of a lot. That it's not. There, it is possible, and the AI we have now with like LLMs, I'm pretty sure will never have like consciousness in that sort. They're just not. This is why that point about materiality matters. That those are things that just the way they are built is not the sort of thing that would foster consciousness. There might be other ways to build AI that could. If we could figure out consciousness, that's a whole other course. Those, I think, would mark something special. A special case that, like, going back to Star Trek, would get data to work. That would be a special case. There's a lot in this. There's a lot of gradation. And that we are still in that sort of gradation where there might be a qualitative change after enough quantitative differences, but we're not to that qualitative change yet. So and there are ways, and this can be highly idiosyncratic, that, some people will treat, certain objects, as more mind minded than others. And there's actually, I think, good reasons to do that with scientific instruments. But yeah, I think it is ultimately that we're in a spectrum, and there are some unique things with AI, but it doesn't make them like a fundamental different case.
So I'm gonna defend the trolls.
Mhm.
Let- got- Only up to a point. Well, I'm not gonna defend their behavior in this particular case of the Tay, but I'm gonna defend them in their rejection of the assumption that seems to be driving your ethical impulse, which is that when I encounter AI, I should see it as someone that I might enter into some sort of community with, at least eventually. But that also could sort of I could enter into a dance, but that will help me improve my life, my life. I want to say that sometimes when the AI shows up, I think we all know this kind of reaction. I'm like, oh God, this corporation wants to substitute a swap service. It's in place of a actual human interaction. When you get on the phone and the AI starts talking, I want to say, oh my God, you're going to have me talk to a person eventually anyway. Just give me the person. Let's go. And of course, this will simplify wood process. It will not, this is not making my life better. It's not making their life better. It's not making anything better, but maybe their corporation wants me to hang up and not, like I said, not talk to their person at all. So here's the thing, like sometimes that's the way the human wants to respond ethically to what's going on in the AI. Now, I don't think that the trolls did that in a very in the best way. But I mean, but clearly what they were trying to do at some level was trying to show that this thing that is being offered by the Microsoft Corporation, this is not any good. It's terrible. Like, I don't want to have interaction with this. No, I'm going to prove it in the most offensive and trollish way. And so, no, I don't defend that. But like, I defend a little bit their willingness and their success at proving that this was a crap product that should not have been hoisted on your door. There you go.
I want to quibble with one point and then actually brief allowance. Okay. The quibble is that just as these things get more and more built in, we are already in community itself. And so it's not a question of do we want to be a part of it. And this whole like thing here about the way it's getting built in the most sort of modified capitalist way, and that we might ask a question about whether that would be ethical for people, and that's a whole other discussion. But the community is already getting built. The question is, how do we build an intelligent? And that the experience, I'm still gonna say that what the trolls did with K was bull. Twofold response with the use of AI in call. I would just hanging up on that or venting on that. Yeah. Given the difference between that sort of voice assisting program and an actual human who you'll talk to, it might be called for that. In part because there are some times where I try not to, but I do find it right to dent to a human who is unhelpful and helping.
In the actual practice, that's what I do. I don't yell things at the AI call system.
But I think the question that should be asked, though this requires larger cultural transformation, is that the way we should be implementing AI? And that's one thing that needs to get opened up, though that itself is going to be a big, huge challenge. So I think that's probably the more important thing than just the sort of how do I treat the voice assistant that AGT or whatever is forcing?
But in that situation, I didn't have any choice because it's being implemented upon me. And, the trolls took advantage of it. They had a little chance to fight back. I do not approve of the way they fought back. They did fight back. I can't do anything.
So follow up there. I mean, so how would you prove that AI is going to go all the Elon Musk or could trust it, but where we couldn't for trust and it's did it for don't push the boundaries.
That is a good question that I don't have an immediate response to. Um, some of that I think has to be a sort of technical question about how you bring these things up. And that's outside of my wheelhouse. And that's where I just let the computer science be over what they did. I think caution, and a caution that is not being seen at this moment with the way AI gets implemented, and in a way that uses what Dewey would call creative intelligence, where you problematize the uses that we're putting it towards. Because some of this will, if I had my way about this or so, we would move much more slowly. And this in part goes back to the question Jennifer raised. So how do I use it? Yeah, so I'm not sure there's actually what. Actually, there's some really cool stuff. That's not so much the social stuff. Moving with it slowly, and that I think is the way that has to be. So there's space to say when it starts doing the sort of Terminator thing, that they're always to shut it down. But that requires, that you have the proper feedback loops at multiple levels to ensure
Which really don't exist now. I mean, most of AIs, I mean, are black box. I mean, even the people who built the models tell you how their lives.
Well, and that's its sculptors. That is Zebra. Well, it's a huge problem, and the problem is it's a feature, not a bug. That what allows models to actually work is that people take their hands off and it learns. And sometimes, I mean, for as much as I will make fun of the mistakes ChatGPT makes, there also are times where it will make actually some truly sophisticated claims and do some reasoning that actually is impressive. But it's precisely because they program as triple as all. The other, well, so it's that's a question I need a better answer to. So I appreciate that because it's finding a way under present circumstances is obviously difficult.
This flows on with your question. This is made us related to the Aries Kappa too. There's a sort of paradox with the Luddite, right? It's just that they're the people that are typically most likely to have the least experience with whatever the technology is in question, always by design, right? And my prediction, or you could challenge if you want, is that you spent a month treating, I don't pick your OM of choice, and as a sort of person like you suggest, you might mainly treat it as provincially a person, right? You'll find out it's probably a lot closer to being a person. You're going to redraw the line, right? Wherever you want to draw it. You don't have to draw it now, but wherever you're going to draw it, it won't take an awful lot of treating it like a person as it you suggest, where the line's going to be a lot closer to us than you might be suggesting. That's how best way to
I think that's right. And I think that's the there is there's still something in here that needs to work, but it's a work in progress. So I should have said that at the start. Um, and that I think that that people who do engage with these do come to personalize them in probably at least two relevant senses. Uh, and what's this goes to sort of not knowing what it's doing. That speaks to the sociality of the technology because with the way in which ChatGPT is increasingly being used as companion, it's something that's really, at least without like any good studies on this like reference, seems to have grown up basically since like April, May. And that was not built in. That was people using it and coming to befriend it. And this the dance there does require the guardrails, but people are really adept at finding ways to jump the rails. To I think it's metaphors, but um, and that also speaks to finding ways for us to inculcate the right habits so that we are going to try to use it better. And I think it does turn it back on how it is, who we are, and how we're going to act with it. So that might be the place to stop them back.
All right. So I think that's our time.
Okay.
So thanks to